Welcome, everyone. This is a session. It's a bit of an add-on. I want to thank Mark Smith for allowing Daniel and myself to be here. This session is called "When Virtual Learning is Your Only Option." Something that is probably on your mind quite a bit lately if you've been watching the news and not been in a hole in the ground. If you're in a hole in the ground, you're probably much safer than the rest of us. But I'd like to go ahead and introduce ourselves. I am Dennis Grice. I'm a digital literacy coach or technology coach at my school. I'll let Daniel Mendes introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm also a digital literacy coach focusing on media as well. And zooming in with us today is Rushton Hurley. He's up there managing the Zoom. He's recording it using this pro version. The reason why we're using Zoom, someone just asked a question on that. Why not use Google Hangouts? Well, both Dennis and I, we live in Shanghai, China. And I saw a bunch of heads pop up.
Yep.
We've been back for 2 months.
Yes, I am fun-loving and fever-free. Yeah.
Yes. So we have been back. We're actually more scared of you because we've been quarantining ourselves up. I'm in Colorado and
I've been in California.
So basically, our story is very simple. We were back in China. We were back from Christmas break. We had heard that there was something going on in Wuhan, China.
Chinese New Year break.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay.
But we came back and we were like, okay, there's something going on.
I did the same thing for some reason.
There we go.
Everything just went crazy. Got out. The outbreak happened in the rest of China, and we were all on Chinese New Year break.
I was relaxing on a beach in the Philippines with just a bag of shorts and t-shirts and just my iPad when I learned that my flight back home was canceled, or back to Shanghai, and made arrangements to reroute back to Los Angeles, where the clothes I'm wearing have all been bought since I've returned back. I had to get a coat for Michigan. And since then, we have been running or helping facilitate our teachers in running virtual schools. So we are about 2 months in to virtual school with our students. And it's been a rocky road, but we're here to kind of share our story and maybe some things that we've learned, some bumps that we've hit on the road along the way, and some advice for you with a little bit of hindsight.
So as I was saying, we use Zoom because Google's blocked in China. And so Microsoft Teams is also another option, but again, it's something that isn't working very well through the Great Firewall of China. They tend to block our internet speeds, and you'll see that on one of our slides today. So next slide.
Oh, there we go.
So one of the biggest things what have we learned? We've learned a lot in the last weeks. We were not a blended online learning machine at our school. If we were using a learning management system, we were using it mainly as an announcement board. Here's your homework. This is what you're going to need to do. This is what we expect of you. Bring this into class next day. And it wasn't until we were put in this position that a lot of us didn't know what to do. Well, a lot of our teachers didn't know what to do. How many of you are kind of in that boat where you guys kind of use a little bit of online learning, but not necessarily the way that you're hoping to do within virtual online learning? Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got some resources for you, some tips. Hopefully that will help you. The first one is school. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. One of the things we tried to do at first was we were trying to basically make the school day, the online school day, match the schedule that we were doing at school. So we wanted to recreate the school experience for those kids at home, where at 8 o'clock you do reading and writing, at 10 o'clock you do math, at 11:30 you do music, and you'd have your assignments and things like that. And what we quickly found out was it ended up being too much work. We had parents about a couple of weeks in telling us that my child is working on homework between 8 and 12 hours a day, because what you don't think about is they have to navigate the technology to find the resources that the teachers are sharing. And we are kind of Wild West. Teachers are sharing resources all over the place. And you have parents with 3 kids in 3 different grades going to 3 or 4 different places just to find all their resources. And then they were posting videos, and bandwidth was an issue. They might take a half an hour just to download the 5-minute video lesson that the teacher had posted for the day. And you're also dealing with other parts of life, and it was just taking a long time, and we really needed to scale back on that.
Yeah, we were on Chinese New Year when our school said, school's closed, please don't come back, kind of thing. And so we had students who were on vacation in a tropical area with maybe an iPad. We were
sometimes just a phone.
Just a phone. Sometimes sharing devices. So between brother or mother and father, internet in some of these places was weak, not what they used to have. So they didn't go back and they stayed there, or they've been moving around the world, going to other places. So I know it's different for you all, but I know that some of the questions were like, some of your students don't have internet access at home. Some of them don't have access to a laptop or an iPad. And so we had to be creative as well for those students as well and work with them.
Right, and one of the things that we learned kind of the hard way, as we're sort of building this plane in the air while it's flying, is we realized, we need to focus on the essentials. Look at the learning goals and get caught up in, this is the daily work that they have to do Monday, and this is what they have to do Tuesday, this is what they have to do Thursday. And we, Daniel and I, and up with some ideas of what are some best practices for online teaching. And we have a resource doc, we'll be sharing all this stuff too, but I'll let Daniel speak to graphic.
Yeah, basically what we're talking about is break your lessons down into small chunks, small things for the day. Today we're going to do just this, okay? And then the other thing is establish yourself as a presence, like a repetitive, post something daily. How are you doing? It can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be a lesson. Hey, you know what? Someone's just shared with me some of their work. I want to share it with all of you. Just establish that routine, because here's another thing that I struggled as a parent. I have 2 young children. I got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. Their home in Silverthorne is their vacation home. We come back in the summertime to that. They think that they're on vacation, even though they know that they're supposed to be at school. Same thing for these kids. Your students will be at home thinking it's vacation time. And so establishing a little bit of a routine that say, hey, daily, I'm going to go check my work, I'm going to go check my email, I'm going to check my learning management system. Just knowing that there's going to be a little something. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a big project or anything like that. Hey, you know what? I was looking at so-and-so's work. This is what they posted. What do you guys think? Clear expectations for the lesson, simple, easy, and just trying to engage students with what they may have at home, or real world experiences. Okay, try to use as many different resources to see how important this is to them to know, to learn right now.
Daniel and I, and along with one on the screen, his name is Chris Carter, we host a podcast, an educational podcast, and you can find us at podcast.concordiashanghai.org. We'll put a link in the notes so you can find that later. But we've done a couple of podcasts since this whole virtual school thing started, and Chris Carter is in Shanghai right now, so it is the middle of the night for him. But we wanted to bring you some of his words about how you want to, how he as a high school teacher has sort of, broken it down into the essentials. Okay. That's much quieter than Chris usually. Let me lower this. Try it again.
Hit the nail on the head. You start and end with the essentials. So I've reduced each lesson plan to one, or in the case of AP, two essential questions. These are the questions that you've got to be able to answer for me, kids, in order to know that you've successfully navigated this lesson plan. If you can answer these questions thoroughly, you've got what I was trying to teach. And then I've got to ask myself, how do I know when they've actually learned it, right? So reduce your lesson plan to one essential question that you can walk away feeling good about. If my kids really know this answer, they've got the lesson, then ask yourself, and how will I know that they've learned it? And if you can answer that question, you've got, foundationally, a good online lesson plan.
Okay, so yeah, that's the idea of focusing on, look at your learning goals. Maybe use some of that, backwards design, and then come up with activities and ways to assess. One of the struggles, and maybe Daniel can address that too, that we had to deal with in the high school, was how do I do a test? How do I make sure the kids don't? And I'll let him address, how how our high school people are dealing with that.
It's so much easier to manage a classroom when they're all in front of you, right? So the idea of demonstrating your learning no longer is a multiple choice answer question. It is, write me a story about what you're doing. Paint me a picture, draw, video, anything that they can do, snap a picture of something that demonstrates their learning. That's the way that you report back.
Yeah. And a couple other things to consider that we had to kind of stop and consider is, one, consider people. And we had, like Daniel said, we had teachers, basically spread all over the world. Daniel's in a situation where, in addition to, trying to support the virtual learning at our school, he also has to do homeschool for his children. We have some elementary teachers in that similar situation. They have 3 kids at home. They're trying to do these lessons with their children, at the same time prepare lessons for their team. And I love the analogy that you have when you're on the airplane. Always put your oxygen mask on before helping others. Self-care is so important, and you need to be a self-advocate for what you have the bandwidth to deal with. And don't, you're not going to help anyone by being a martyr and overworking yourself to the point where your students suffer. You can't help your students if you don't help yourself. And just think of that, Maslow before Bloom. You got to know you're safe. You got to know, that you have all those essentials to be safe and healthy before you can help your students. And what's great in our situation is we have grade level teams, and those teams meet together, and they're sharing the load. If one teacher doesn't have the capacity or is working at capacity, but there's still other things that need to be done, the rest of that team can pick that up and take that information and share those lessons. And they're working together quite well. It is really stressful, but consider the people. And here's just some pictures that our students have sent of home learning happening. And this is our one teacher who has her three boys at home, and they're all working online. And this is another student doing some of the PE activities. The PE coach has recorded a daily workout routine for them so they can get moving. And the thing to consider too, and you guys will probably not be in quite this situation, but we have some students who have not left their apartment in over 40 days. And that's rough.
Yeah, they can walk around their compound, but they can't go to other people's compounds. So one of the other things that we talk about here is allowing for synchronous chat, for a Zoom call where you get to see people's faces, just to say, hi, how are you doing? And it could be a little activity, it could be a learning activity, but having that synchronous ability to just see everybody's face and actually, if you go to the next one, no, the next one, go back one more.
Oh, okay. Back one more or forward?
Forward.
Okay.
To the one with my grade 2. Grade 2. This is my second grade class. That's Miss Muchler up there. She's putting on a pretty great face. She's actually in Shanghai right now. My son is the one in the corner there. He does not get his personality from me. But see that there's a couple of faces in here. They're showing their emotion. You know what? They're sad. They're not seeing their friends. They're not with their friends. They're probably in some place that they'd rather not be. And so some of them are showing their emotions. And it's good to have these kind of moments so that the teacher can see. We can have our counselors reach out to those individuals, find out what's going on. So having those every periodically, you know, one of the things that we'll talk about is not mandating these things be regimented like we are in school sometimes. It's allowing it to flow a little bit. But so consider people, let's go back to the movie. So people have been in their house for 44 days. And so they've become very creative.
Yeah, this is some of the creativity of people in Shanghai dealing with not being able to leave their apartment. I think there's some gambling going on in that picture. Jogging.
PE. You get the idea.
Yeah.
People are going stir crazy. And so just consider the people when you're actually doing these lessons. Give enough time. Maybe give more time than what you thought you needed. A lot of our teachers are saying, you know what, find time within the next 36, 48, maybe the rest of the week. Give them a week's time to do things.
Yeah.
It depends on your class, depends on your grade level. Those are all things to consider.
Well, and what some of our elementary teachers are doing, rather than doing requiring students to do math and reading and social studies and science every single day, they're going to say, okay, here's some activities you need to be working on, some activities you need to be reviewing. But on Monday is the day when you turn in your math. On Tuesday is the day when you turn in your reading. Giving them some extra time, some flexibility in those deadlines to get that work back to you. And let's see, something else to think about too. About 3 weeks in, we were getting word from parents that concern over the amount of screen time. Online learning is a lot of screen time. So what we've done in our elementary and I think middle school too, a little bit, is provide some activities that you tell them, okay, here's something, you know, go and do this on paper, or go and do this away from the computer, get off the computer for a while, do this. And when you're done, take a picture of it, take a video of it, send that back, but get some time away from the screen. And it's also a little bit less stressful if you're doing something on paper, designing a project or putting something together, where you can be away from the screen for a while. And in our podcast, we talk about everything. Learning is all about relationships. It's that relationship that comes first. I don't care what you know until I know care. And finding those connections when you can't be in a classroom face-to-face with the students every day. How do you connect? Like even here at the conference, we're seeing people, it's like, oh, we'll do the elbow because we probably shouldn't shake hands. We don't want to share this stuff. This is something that was shared and what's going on in Shanghai, when you can't shake hands, we call this the Wuhan shake. So maybe we can start that around here. You know, we can start doing the Wuhan shake or the MACUL shake or something like that. But if you want to make a connection with someone, but you don't want to have the awkwardness, oh, I don't want to touch you. No, just do a little thing with your feet there. You know, do a little Wuhan shake.
Just to be honest with you, we did not expect to be out for 6 weeks. I'm being honest with you all. If it's starting now, we don't know how long it's going to be. And one of the things from my perspective that's gone through this, not knowing when I'm going back is messing with my head, right? And so thinking about ways that you can kind of overcome that, deal with that, we don't know when this is going to end, all right? In fact, my sister-in-law is a nurse, and she said because it's so late in the flu season, they expect it to come back in the fall. So
in some way, shape, or form, we're not sure.
Some way,
we don't know.
Either stronger. Think about that. You're in this for the long term. If you're going to go out for a while, think long term. It's not just 2 weeks. In fact, my story was when I left Shanghai, I was like, oh, it's only going to be 2 weeks. I'll go to Vietnam because we're moving there next September. And let's go spend some time in Vietnam. Then all of a sudden, the windows start closing. It's like planes stopped flying to the U.S. We couldn't get back to the U.S. So things got really scary. So we finally made our way 39 hours later. We made it back to Colorado, but we thought, okay, another 3 weeks. It's been 6, and there is no end in sight yet. Now, one thing I will advise, if there are some district people here, have a plan for when you're going to notify people when you're going back. Say, you know what, in 2 weeks, we plan to open up again. Not next week or anything like, give people time to kind of prepare themselves to make sure that they're ready to go back. Now, for you, because you actually live here, some of the schools around the world that have also closed, international schools around the world are closing daily, every day. Some of them have suggested, you know what, only the teachers come to work to do their lessons, to do their things, and students stay home. So that might be an option for some of your school districts.
Well, and if you're interested in what some of your options might be, in the call with us today is also Rushton Hurley, who's probably a familiar face to you MACUL folks. And he's been working, putting up some plans or some contingency ideas or ways to deal with this outbreak or school closures. And you've been working with some high schools in the Bay Area. And maybe Rushton, if you could pop in and kind of share, you know, what you're doing and how you're helping with that.
Hi guys, can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Good deal. So as we think about this issue, you know, it seems awfully remote when we talk about it as international schools are in China, but just a couple of weeks ago, when just exactly 2 weeks ago, when Japan closed its schools across the country, the principal and president of the boys' Catholic high school, where I spend a lot of my time, we got together and said we better come up with some plans fast. And so last week we spent the first 3 days, you know, I was going around and making sure people had Zoom and Screencastify accounts. And on Thursday we had a full day in service. It was going to be something else, but it ended up being, what if we have to switch to online instruction? Friday there was a big archdiocese thing, and then Sunday night we got word that a family member of one of the students had tested positive for the coronavirus. And so what had been just oh, well, you know, like this is something we can figure out over the next couple of weeks, was suddenly we're having to figure it out right now. And so I've been spending a lot of time this week connecting with people, using this video conference tool. I'm a big fan of Zoom. I love its strengths. And you know, the screen share allows us to kind of help people understand, you know, this is how you do this. No, when you're trying these things, do this. And they're spending a lot of time trying this out together. So that's kind of the story up to this point. We too really don't know when this is going to end. Initially, we was like, well, we'll do a 3-day deep meeting. And then all of the schools in the Archdiocese were closed for the next 2 weeks. And we'll see if that's actually how that works out. So I've spent a lot of time focusing on how do you help a team wrap their heads around this, and put a guide on xvis.org. That'll be in the session notes for this one. I did a webinar yesterday with a few hundred people registered, you know, that kind of thing. Really built around that idea of how do we think about this as a process, because there are lots of issues in play, and for teachers, the issue is, what can I do now? Now, let's kind of work with that from a couple of angles. One, what do you already know how to do, and would that translate to online? What can you do while you're still meeting face-to-face that will allow you to get used to something else? And what will you definitely need? And as they've already told you in the slides that we've gone so far, a screencasting tool, an LMS, and a video conferencing tool are the key pieces. And so as you look at this and you think, well, gosh, you know, are we prepared? Are we ready? Just know that this can happen at any point. And being able to say, hey, we've got a couple of days, let's use it to try working some of these things into our lessons. You know, let's try, you know, creating screencasts together as a grade level team or as a departmental team. Let's have kids try making some of these things as well, because we might have to assess their work that way. Anything you can try now, you're going to be better off later for having given it some time.
All right. Thank you, Rushton.
Good to see all you guys.
Okay. You're yeah, we wish you were here too. So let's move on here. Oh wait, there's the, if you're looking for Rushton, there's his contact information for you. Should have had that on the screen when he was talking. Other things you want to consider, bandwidth and devices. We mentioned we kind of got caught with kids with all sorts of different devices and different bandwidth and different internet. One of the issues that we deal with is China tends to throttle the internet for international sites. And since most of our tools that we use are hosted internationally, this is a screenshot from one of our teachers in Shanghai. And when he was trying to reach sites outside of China, this was his download speed and upload speed. Whereas sites inside China on his same internet connection were coming in, you know, a little bit better. So take into consideration the fact that your students are at home. What devices are they using? Are you sending something out that if all they have access to is a phone, can they get it on that? When you're making videos, are you compressing the size? Are you posting short videos? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But think about, you may be able to put something out and say, well, here's my online lesson. But get feedback from your students. Are they able to access it? And if they can't, what adjustments can you make? We have teachers that are posting things in a couple different places just because students are in different situations. It's a little extra work. But like I said, you know, they work as a team and they kind of divide the load, and they're able to do that. But stay in touch with your students on how they're doing that.
It may even be that you have to print something out and deliver it to the house, or however, whatever, for those students that live in the neighborhood and need to know what's going on. That might be the best way. You guys are gonna have to figure out, think of your weakest, I like
you're gonna say weakest link?
You remember that show? It's like, you are the weakest link, goodbye. Think about the weakest link and work your way backwards on that lesson. Does that mean that, you know, this lesson doesn't require any internet access? Maybe it's just an activity they need to do.
Right.
You print it out and send it to them.
And like I said, we're a few weeks into this, and we've had some learning experiences. We've learned from some of the bumps and bruises along the way. But if I was to go back and talk to myself 6 months ago, saying, hey, this is coming, this is what you need to do. Here's kind of a list of kind of our big takeaways. One, teachers need to know how to make video. And it's important that, you know, you can create it. You can create it with QuickTime on a Mac. It's a very simple tool for recording yourself from your webcam or recording your screen. But something to think about, and we ran into this problem very early. If you've ever created a video on your iPad or recorded yourself with your phone and sent that to your computer, a 5-minute video can be almost a gigabyte. And if you're trying to upload that to something to share, you're not going to put that in as an email attachment. You need to, if you're working with iMovie, export that in the smallest file size possible. Even with Apple, that's still going to be big and it's not going to be a noticeable quality difference. What we found out to be extremely helpful is a free software tool called Handbrake. Now, I used to use this to rip DVDs, but you can also bring in video that you've created, and I've had some 300 megabyte QuickTime videos that I've been able to compress down to 30 for posting and sharing. And sometimes they can get even smaller if you're doing screencasting. So that's really key. Create and compress. I saw a question in the back. It's called Handbrake. It's oh yeah. I think I've got it in the notes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we have it in the
It's
resource
not.
note.
Yeah, it works on both Windows and Mac.
For those people who have a hard time making a video, I had one teacher set up their laptop right there, like on a stack of books and stuff like that. They actually went out and bought a whiteboard, pressed the record button, did their lesson. That was what they could do, you know, their lesson by just showing like a video of themselves doing it on the board. Whatever it takes to get the job done.
And Rushton mentioned this as well. Learn how to screencast. Learn how to record your screen. We had never done any training on this, and some of our teachers started using Screencast-O-Matic, which lets you record your screen, but it also lets you put your face down in the corner. And as I mentioned earlier, it's so important that the kids get to see your face. They can see your facial reaction. And you know, you could be the friendly face that they see in their home that, you know, they might not see anywhere else. And one of my mentor teachers taught me, you know, it's okay to sacrifice your dignity for the sake of learning. So it's okay to be silly, but you know, learn how to do screencasting because that's so important. And keep those videos short, you know, 5 to 7 minutes. How many of you have ever done flipping your classroom lessons? All right, you guys are probably much better equipped to deal with something like you understand the importance of creating simple, short videos that teach a concept that you can share out. Keep those videos, you know, no longer than 6 or 7 minutes, you know, 2 or 3 minutes are perfect. Break the concepts down. And then what you do is you use those Zoom calls not to push out your content, not to do a live conference. Because how many of you have participated in a multi-person Zoom call? And you have that issue where, you know, the connection kind of breaks up, and we've had teachers try that where they're trying to teach a concept and then the kids are going, wait, you froze, I can't hear you, what's going on? Use your flipped classroom, use those pre-recorded videos to push your content out. And then the other aspect of flipping the classroom, if you're in your class, you take that extra time to go around to your students and work with them individually. That's how you use the Zoom call. You use the Zoom call for like office hours to connect with those students, see who has questions, let them see your face and interact, but in a way that's not content required, but it's a way to share that information or just to check in on how your students are doing.
Yep. Next one. This is really, really important. If you're a school-wide, knowing what your tools are for reporting learning, for communicating out, you need to know what everybody else is doing. I'm having 3 kids at home and so-and-so's teacher does this on this app, but then on this app, it's someone else who teaches on that app. And then we're talking middle school and high school. You guys need to have a plan for which tools you guys use. We use Seesaw, Canvas, and we do use some Team for internal communication. However, we each have had situations here where this is broken down at a certain point. For example, I'll talk about Canvas.
Yeah.
Canvas was, like I said earlier, only used to post homework, to communicate things that were going on. It wasn't, we weren't using the discussion boards. We weren't using some of the project-based stuff, the group-based discussion stuff, all of that kind of work. Things weren't being submitted through Canvas, which now on a virtual online platform, you're going to need to do that. Somehow you're going to have to figure out a way that people or your students submit their homework.
Yeah.
You took to Seesaw?
Yeah, Seesaw was another interesting one. How many Seesaw users do we have here? And you use that in your class. The kids scan the code and they're able to add things to their journal. Initially, when when this happened, we say, oh, we'll just do that at home, until we realized if we share that class code, when the kids scan that class code, they can log in as anyone. And that raised all sorts of privacy issues. So we had to very quickly create email addresses for all our students, switch those classes over to email sign-in, switch the classes so students couldn't see each other's work. And before, we had to get all this done, and it took a little while to kind of get that all put together. And then we had teachers also who were sort of using Seesaw, but not really, didn't understand the tools. And now we're doing online training, teaching them how to use activities, how to collect assignments from students, and just how, what you can post on video. One of the issues that we're having right now with Seesaw that we're working on trying to solve is teachers are posting templates in the activities. Parents want to print those templates out. How do you do that? Well, you can't really. So we're trying to troubleshoot how we do that. Maybe for those parents who want to print it out and work on it on paper, provide a separate document with links to the templates for the week. So those parents who want to print it out can print it out. Those students that want to work on it online and submit it through Seesaw can do the same thing. But just some of those challenges of knowing the tools, learning to use the tools you have, and learning all the interactive features is really key.
Yeah, the Teams, we were in the process of going to Teams for our teachers to communicate, and this all went through, and all of a sudden now I've got some real high flyers on Teams that contact me, but then we still have some that are still on email, and then we use something called WeChat. So now I've got 3 different communication paths that people are sending to me. Hey, I need help on this, I need help on that. So knowing how to communicate internally within your school or your district, so that you make sure that you are not missing anything, or you're getting the help that you need. That was one that we wish we could go back and have another few months.
And then too, for distributing videos and pushing things out, you might have ways that your district uses for that. We don't have access to things like YouTube, and Google is blocked in China, so we have to look for other ways to share videos. But you probably might be dealing with some of the same things, or perhaps YouTube might be blocked in your district. If you're going to put things on YouTube and your students are using district supplied devices at home, is it still blocked? How are you going to get the video out to them? Think about how that stuff is going to be delivered when they don't have, they're not on campus and able to get the tech support. We had an issue with our middle school. Those that have their laptops at home, they only have student user. They don't have administrative access. So if they need to update or if they need to install anything, they can't, and they're not on campus to where that can be done. So you want to be able to make sure that you're designing things to work with the tools that you have. And it's like, oh, this requires a software update, but I can't do it.
Right. You know what? People have stepped up. Companies have stepped up. Here is only half of the ones that have stepped up.
Yeah, this list is growing.
And it keeps growing. We have a resource that
pocket.
we keep
Blew her nose.
Are you fucking kidding?
just make sure that you keep looking through the resource. But these companies have said during the whole COVID virus outbreak, their pro account or their regular account, the subscription account will be free. So make sure you get on there and get some of those as tools. Some of you have been probably using the trial version or some other version. There's a whole bunch that are starting to now pop up.
Yeah, I want to kind of shout out a couple of them. One that's just been really helpful is if you have BrainPop and you have individual student logins enabled, You can assign videos. Students can actually create their own BrainPop videos and submit them to your BrainPop class. They can do mind maps. BrainPop's just been extremely helpful in that. Another company that stepped up early on was VoiceThread. And an example of how many of you are familiar with VoiceThread? It's been around forever, you know, like 2007, which is like forever in technology years. But we had a 5th grade class, and they were, if they were in class, they were going to be doing debates, and the students would be standing up in class debating topics. Well, what the teacher ended up doing is creating voice threads with a slide that had the topic and the 2 student names on them, and the students would record, well, one student would record the pro response and put that on the voice thread slide. The next student would listen to that and then add their rebuttal, and they would go back and forth on those voice thread slides. And that was just a really creative way of doing that. And VoiceThread was really helpful in getting us set up with that. But yeah, a lot of these tools, and I've put links to the announcements that they've used for if your school is closed, how to get free access. That's in the resource document as well.
So we want to show you some of the things. We're so proud of some of the people that we work with because they've really stepped up. The next couple of slides will show you a couple of different ways. For the lower grades, there was a question on the Padlet, you know, what do we do for lower grades? Well, here's a great example. Here's our teachers who's an ELL, English language learner teacher. We have a lot of Chinese students learning English. And he never did videos like this before this situation. Watch this video.
Oh, that's not the video. There we go.
Hi, boys and girls. It's Mr. Lance. Do you know, today's English fun time is going to be a little different. Do you know why? Because it's cold. Yeah. For those of us who are still in Shanghai, we thought that spring was here and that it was getting warmer. But today, everything changed. I looked outside and I saw snow on cars. Yes, snow on cars in Shanghai. So even though we thought it was spring, it's still winter. Yeah, winter. Now, some people really like winter. They like it when it's cold. They like the snow. They like all the things that come with winter. But guess what? Some people don't love winter. And so those people tend to complain. Complain? Yeah. They might talk about, oh, it's so cold. Oh, I wish it wasn't so cold. Oh, I wish the weather was warmer. Oh, right? And they might even do some funny sounds with their body. Something like this. They might moan. Can you say moan?
So then he goes on. And he reads the book that goes along with the story, like the whole lesson. And all he does is just put it up in front next to his head, and it tells the story as if he was in the classroom. Great job. You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about our podcast on epidemiology?
Yeah, our last podcast, if you go to concordiashanghai.org, the last episode zoomed in a group of our high school students who, when they were on campus, they were in an epidemiology class. Nice timing for a class like that, right? Their teacher actually is pretty amazing. She had actually done a fellowship at the CDC last summer, and they were in their parasite unit. But when this happened, their learning shifted to home-based learning, and they dove into research the coronavirus. And these students have done some amazing work and research. They created some timelines of the virus. They created some videos on how to use masks and you know, what kind of masks are right, how to wear them, when to wear them. And the project that they're working on now is they're actually developing lesson plans for elementary and middle school students on how to deal with that. And it was just one of those things where, you know, you got some lemons and you're going to make some, I like to say make limoncello, but make lemonade. So what you have as an opportunity for something like this is to really leverage that anytime, anywhere learning, and let kids be creative in the circumstances that they're at, and let teachers be creative to see some amazing stuff happen. You know, it's not all bad and doom and gloom. There's some fantastic opportunities here. And when I was early on kind of starting with meeting with our grade level teams, they said, you know, describe one word that you would use when describing how you're feeling or how you're dealing with the virus. And the word I chose was serendipity. It's like, this is a really interesting opportunity to try and learn some new things that you might not have tried before. That can be really stressful, but you have that chance to play with it. And as our high school principal was sharing with everyone in weekly messages, this is your opportunity, and I'm going to fully support you to try something new and fail spectacularly. You know, it's that chance to try, and who knows, you know, new, it may just work spectacularly too.
So we have the resource page right here. We are going to continually update it as we get more. There's a couple of Facebook groups that we'll put up there as well. Teachers that are asking for asking about what to do. But right now we have about 5 minutes left. If you got any questions that you'd like to ask, definitely.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the Padlet too to see what we have as far as some questions, and I think Rushton's still on too. So if there's some questions, I don't know, Rushton, are you actually looking at the Padlet link as well? Are you able to see some of those questions there? He's probably
not looking at the Padlet, but I am looking at the chat. So we're looking for things there.
Oh, you got questions in the chat as well. Okay. Do you have a question in the chat you'd like to address?
Actually, just clarify how the different pieces of information, the slides, the session notes, and the recording will be available to others, to admin teams, etc.
Okay. One of the questions, are there good free sites to use Screencast besides Screencastify? I mean, we can't use Screencastify in China because it requires a Google login, even though Screencastify is offering accounts or free pro accounts to students or to schools that are affected by school closures. We use Screencast-O-Matic, and that does limit you to 15 minutes. But as I said earlier, if you're going to create a video, you want to create something that's short and break it into chunks if you can. Yeah, QuickTime can do a screen recording, and then you compress that and upload. I would definitely recommend handbraking is now a verb for us now. Handbrake those QuickTime videos and then upload those.
Kathleen asked, what did you use to push out assignments, activities to students? Our learning management system, which for the elementary was Seesaw.
For Seesaw, yeah.
And then Canvas for middle school and high school, just being consistent about that. There were some students in the elementary that couldn't access Seesaw from where they were at. There are some issues with their app in terms of clicking on certain links and stuff like that.
Right, and we have had some issues with video, and if we're aware of students where they just, you know, for some reason they just can't see the videos that are on Seesaw, our teachers are aware of that, and they share it out through a messaging app that we use in China called WeChat, or I also have a kind of like a Chinese version of Dropbox called Weiyun Cloud that I will push stuff out to if those videos are longer than 5 minutes. Yeah.
Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, so for example, we had our principals and our superintendent send out an email. This is who we contact for tech issues, techhub@concordiaShanghai.org. This is who you contact for learning. this is who you contact for this. Just having a clear, just concise plan to tell parents, just this is how you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and also for communication too, that kind of reminds me, our principals create a video message that they send out to parents. And the principals, I know specifically in elementary, they're looking at the online classes and what's going on. They're seeing the work that's being submitted. And, every once in a while they might even, do a shout out to a student who just did a really, really amazing job, kind of promoting that work among the other students. And I think there was also a question about participation, and what kind of participation we're having. And that's been one of the struggles when kids are at home. We can't get on them all the time to do the work. Speaking for I'm a tech coach. I work primarily with elementary. We have some classes where pretty much all the students are checking in. We have other classes where they're only consistently receiving work from 5 students. And when that happens, we try and reach out to the parents. We can't go in the home and make them do the work. In our middle school, there's been some concern too about what that's going to do with grades. And some of our middle school teachers have sort of made the policy, if you have a kid who is an A student going into this, we're gonna collect the work, understand that it's kind of an extreme situation. And what they do with virtual school is not going to make that A drop to a D or an F just because they're not participating in virtual school. We want to have some grace on that as well. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
One of the things that we've seen is especially with all these companies stepping up and giving free access to their sources. Question might be like, could we put pressure on some of our internet service providers in the U.S. to allow for a hotspot? There are ways. Unfortunately, I don't have all the answers, but think outside the box. People have gone beyond normal to help us to make sure that we have access to things that we could use. So I don't know what to say about not having devices. Some of our students only have a little cell phone. That's all they have. And in our today's society, I'm assuming that there's at least one cell phone in the household. So if that, and then plan for the backwards from that.
I'll jump in on that as well. Often when we talk about the issues of kids who don't have sufficient access, we're talking about this in terms of equity, which is proper. But I was talking with a teacher recently who said, well, I think the right thing for us to do is not to give assignments while school is closed at all because some folks don't have access. That may create an equitable situation on your campus, but in terms of equity between your school and those schools where they are continuing learning, that's a different matter. So the harder work is to say what kinds of assignments can we put together that can keep the kids without access as close to the curve as possible as we move forward. So you may be in for some hard questions about equity because they get people to the space of, we have to put a lot of time into being creative to get things out for kids who need it. But that's our job.
All right. Let's see. Oh, and thank you for putting the podcast feed on the Padlet, Rushton. Appreciate that. Yeah, and with the one-to-one devices, we have a lot of one-to-one devices at school, but those devices are still sitting at school and our campus is closed. So we are stuck in a situation where we have to deal with whatever technology they have and whatever internet bandwidth they have, wherever these students are in the world.
What should we expect as far as participation from students.
We addressed that a little bit, but yeah, I'll let you talk about that.
So my wife is the high school assistant principal, and she's had to follow up on some of these students that haven't been participating. So having a plan for when kids don't respond within a week or within a certain amount of time, getting your principal involved, your assistant principal, counselors involved in reaching out to those individuals and figuring it out. For some people, the structure of going to school is what works for them. They won't have that. So having that constant connection with them online, and how are you doing? Knowing that they're going to be you're going to be contacting them each day or every other day or something like that, depending on the class and your grade level, is important for a lot of these kids.
Well, there are instances too where, like I said earlier, we don't know the family situations. We want to make sure that we trust the parents to make the decision that's right for their kids. I know, Daniel, you've dealt with that with the issue of homework.
Yeah, there are situations, I'm just thinking in the US, looking at my family that's here in the US and Canada, they work, they both work, they go off. There will be kids that are going to be left at home by themselves all day long. And so how are you going to interact with them? How are you going to make sure that they contact you? That seems to be the situation. Figuring out a plan for them, checking up on them, giving them a phone call, whatever it takes, doing as well. We are contacting parents, we're doing Zoom calls with parents and students, and some of these parents are world travelers. They travel a lot, so they haven't gone back to China, but their child might be in China. You know what I mean? So situations like this where you have to figure out a way. And if you think about it and say, you will find a way, you'll find a way.
Yeah. Our time's just about up, but we'll kind of stick around too if you have additional questions. Thank you guys so much. The resources are here. We'll update that. Yeah, hope you don't have to go through this, but better to be ready and start getting some of that stuff going ahead of time. So for Daniel and myself and Rushton, thank you guys. Thank you very much.